Welcome to this episode of the CS Roundup with Russell and Jan. Hi, Jan.
Hey Russell, how you doing?
Good. So our topic today is what to do in a turf war with sales.
Ooh, turf wars.
Should we start by just making sure we are talking about the same thing?
Yeah, because when we talked about it the other day, I was going in a totally different direction.
Yeah, so there's this book, I think it's called Silos, Politics, and Turf Wars, and I guess this is maybe one third or two thirds of it. So,
Okay.
for me, in my experience, and what I think is kind of a common definition, a turf war with sales is where both sales and CS are trying to do the same thing. And specifically, that thing is own the sales number for the existing customer base. I think that's a really common thing that comes up, and I think it's probably the most understood definition of what a turf war is between those two groups.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Oh yeah, no, totally. What was so funny when we were talking about turf wars the other day is I realized that I personally, I personally have never actually been in turf wars with sales. Like it was really clear we all had our swim lanes, and we weren't fighting over turf, and so and it's funny though because since then I have talked to other people and given advice to other people, but I don't know, I guess one of those classic situations of giving advice when I've never actually lived it myself. But why don't you go ahead and talk about some of the things you've experienced, because I think it's
Yeah,
interesting.
I've had a really front row seat to a lot of this stuff. I worked in an organization where it was a little bit Wild West, and I was really fortunate as a CSM and as a manager of CSMs. I rolled up to a director who was really, really good at basically keeping our turf under our umbrella.
Mhm.
And I'm really grateful to her for that. I don't know how she did it, honestly, and I can't give great advice about it. But I mean, the type of stuff we dealt with would be salespeople creating shadow accounts in Salesforce and selling into
Wait, wait,
them.
wait. Shadow accounts?
Shadow accounts. So, for example, if there was a customer like a law firm and the law firm was, Smith and Smith, and it was the word and, they
Uh-huh.
would create a Salesforce account that had Smith ampersand Smith, and they would
Uh-huh.
work a whole thing. We actually figured out that the best way to check for shadow accounts was to search for the domain name of customers because you could fake everything except the email address of a contact that you're working with. And so if you search for the domain name, this other account would show up because of the activity associated with it. But this is the type of stuff that we had to do instead of
Like they
following
were
our main
sneaky.
goals.
So they were being sneaky and entering in what they were doing in Salesforce, but creating a whole new account in order to do it and track it. And then what? To get like credit over selling something to the customer or something?
Yeah, because there was a perception that it was easier to sell into existing customers than to new customers. I think we hopefully know now that it's not easier, it's just a different motion.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
look, the way I think of this is whatever you're doing in your job, there's something else you're not doing at some given moment. And
Right.
so anybody could go do that thing behind your back and go, oh, see, they're not doing it, so I should be able to own it. And that's what was going on.
Uh,
So, we also were blessed with a really good data analyst who and a Salesforce admin who was able to create like an ROI violation flag system where like if an opportunity was opened and it wasn't opened by the owner of the account, there would be this red alert that was sent out. It got to be really crazy, and the bottom line of it was that in CS and in sales, everybody had their eye taken off of their key activities. That really was what they were supposed to be doing.
right.
It was bad.
Wow, that's crazy. Because mostly what I've seen and heard about from other folks is when there's just it's fuzzy. It hasn't been defined, and so it's not so much sneaking. It's just more like stepping on each other's toes because it's not really clear who's supposed to do what, or the ball getting dropped because it's like, well, I thought you were talking to them, kind of thing. And so, in that respect, thinking about it as sort of like, and that's why I usually suggest to folks, well, if you create a RACI, then like for each activity, kind of through it, if you're actually sharing in that respect. I've mostly worked where sales just just worked on, incoming, and then post sales, it got dropped off over to CS. So like I'm mostly where, and this is when we'll get into silos, is where sales didn't really care about what happened post sales at all. And so they weren't necessarily setting people up for success, right? But like actual turf wars, I've always heard and experienced it as um, misunderstandings, or just fuzzy, not defined well, sort of thing. This
Yeah.
actual sort of sneaky behavior, like, wow, that's that's like James Bond kind of stuff.
It is. It is. If I could offer one piece of advice from having observed that director I rolled up to, and also, now having a lot more experience in constructing customer journeys, you have to work with the other people, right? You have to work with the
Yeah.
salespeople. You have to involve them in planning a journey, and remember, a customer journey uh, has a sales phase. It's not just once the contract is signed that the customer journey starts. And so that's an opportunity to look at every touch point and figure out, well, then what is the RACI for this touch point, and what
Yeah.
is the swim lane for this touch point? You and I recorded an episode, I think it was called Should CSM Sell? And we,
Yeah.
we went into a lot of depth about this. So if anyone's listening and wants to revisit that episode, please do. But I think the bottom line for me is you got to work closely with people. It won't work
Yeah.
if you try to keep them at arm's length.
And if in the end, if you're all sort of working towards that sort of North Star together in the same direction, then you should be able to sort of look at not just what that customer experience is, but on the other side, what your playbooks are, and think about like what's the most efficient way on behalf of the company that we're all working for, by the way. And like let's get this done so we can all be sort of efficient, and it helps our company overall, and hopefully all on the same team together. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. The other thing
yeah.
I always thought was, we every company has competition, and your
Yeah.
competitors are going after your customers, and that's enough competition. You don't need to be competing internally with each other too.
Right. And also, it's really clear to the customer if left hand and right hand aren't cooperating, aren't talking to each other, fighting against each other. That's a real turnoff to the customer. So if you're doing that, it's probably going to lead the customer over to your competition. So it's like you're handing your customer out, on a plate to the competition, saying, "Here, take them." Like, don't do that.
Yeah, yeah. On the other hand, your competitors might be having the same internal struggles. And so if you're not, if everybody in your company is in lockstep, you are so far ahead, and you're probably the rare one who's doing it.
We certainly, if you're all working well in towards the North Star together, then yeah, um, that's always going to be the attractive company to work with. So yeah, have that be your company, and not your competitors. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. All right, well, hopefully, wherever this gets posted, this discussion will generate a lot of comments and people can learn from each other. I hope I learn a lot from anyone who's out there that gives us feedback.
Yeah, definitely. All right.
All right,
Thanks.
see you next time.
Yeah.